Alrighty, on Patriots Corner today, I am honored to speak with wife of former United States Navy SEAL sniper Chris Kyle, Taya Kyle. Taya, how are you, ma'am?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's a true honor, and I cannot thank you enough. This is going to be a great podcast. I'm very excited.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
I follow, on social media. I follow the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation. Where did all that patriotism, come from? Even before, marrying Chris.
Yeah, I mean, my dad was a retired lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, and he did reserves the whole time I was growing up. So I wasn't a big part of that life. I definitely had an appreciation for it, but like I said, it was 1 week in a month, and he kind of did his thing. I had family that served in the military, so we've always grown up appreciative, but I wouldn't say to the level that, certainly not that I am today, just because I didn't have the knowledge, I don't think, of what all went into it and what was behind of it. I definitely had appreciation for it and believe in this country and always love the fact that we are in a place where people risk their lives to be here and live in this country.
Well, one thing I love about you the most is that, whenever you do go on any type of media station, whether it be CNN or Fox News, you always voice your opinion strongly. You're not afraid. I watched you at the CNN town hall when you spoke to, President Obama at the time about gun rights. And that's something that I find so brave and amazing, is because most women don't do that. And you do. And, where did that belief in, Republican conservative America, patriotism, that all spawned from when you were married to Chris, or did that all spawn from earlier?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, I grew up, I was born in the 70s, and my mom was all about women strong. Nobody tells you that you can't do anything because you're a woman. And my dad has always been really supportive of my sister and I having dreams and goals of whatever we want to do. And I don't think it ever occurred to me that being female would ever limit me in any way, shape, or form. I just didn't believe it. I wanted to grow up and be a race car driver. I remember they asked me what I wanted to do for a living when I was pretty young. I said, I want to be a quarterback in the NFL. And they were like, get it, girl. You go for it. And nobody said, like, oh, no, that's probably not going to work out. But so I think that was pretty impactful. Our friends, my mom worked for a little while in high school. She's educated. I mean, she was getting her master's degree when we were growing up, but she already had her undergraduate in education. And so she was still accomplishing things that she wanted to accomplish. And then she went and worked part-time for a woman who was a powerhouse, and she ran a temporary agency. And it never occurred to me that it was a woman-run business. It was just the way it was. And I think about it now because I notice when people are saying that women don't get a fair shake or women are oppressed or something, it boggles my mind that people say that here in America, because I just haven't had that experience. I have seen some levels of harassment. I'm not ignorant to the fact that that can exist, but I also was raised a really strong, powerful woman, and I don't know that I would stand for it, right? And I'm not saying it's not a delicate balance in some ways, but I think we as women, we draw the line and we draw the boundaries of what's acceptable and not. And if it's not, we have all the tools available to us to address it, usually. I'm not saying always. I know there are places where they need to do more work in giving women an opportunity to fight that. But for the most part, I feel very much empowered in this country. So when you ask a question about, where do I get the strength or how do I feel strong enough to say those things, I think it's just a combination of, yes, my life with Chris. He definitely had a way of being vulnerable by just being him. And sometimes that's scary when you know people are going to attack you for it, but really they're going to attack you no matter what you do. I've learned that. So it is much more powerful to just be you, speak truth, and hopefully be well thought out before you open your mouth. I mean, that town hall that you're talking about, I gave that a lot of thought, and I talked to people who didn't agree with me beforehand so that I could really try to boil it down to a succinct sentence, because it is a complex issue. But the more you talk to people who disagree with you on it, the more I found that it's a pretty simple problem in the end, and this everybody is fear-based, both gun owners and non-gun owners, and I don't think either one of the extreme fears are probably the truth of what could actually happen. So if you find what the commonalities are, that's where my statement and question to President Obama came from. It's like, let's just stop for a minute, because we're hearing a lot of sound bites and people are really inflamed. If we stop and try to understand each other and take away all the verbiage that people are using to get the other side riled up, we're not that far apart.
Yes, of course. And you know how you mentioned gun owners. I'm not a gun owner. My father's a gun owner. I go hunting and shooting with my father, so I did support your answer 100%. Was it hard to get up, at the town hall meeting in front of President Obama? I'm assuming, of course, he was very familiar with who you were and, your family as well. Was that difficult to get up and voice your opinion, to him about it?
Well, it's interesting because I'd met him before, just briefly, and he and his wife, it was a White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I wasn't sure. I knew that Michelle Obama had spoken out in support of American Sniper, the movie, and that, I think, was a result of knowing Bradley Cooper. And so that was a nice and appropriate, I think, thing that she did. But me and them didn't really have an impact on me one way or the other. That didn't, I just feel like people are people, and I don't tend to have I don't tend to get intimidated by people's position, and I've always been like that, even since a little kid. I don't know why that is. I just never have, and I really care more about who people are in their heart. But what did get me nervous, and I'll tell you, I was more nervous then than I think I've been in anything else I can remember publicly, and that was because I knew that I had some things to say, and I was going to be in a room with people who vehemently disagreed with me, and that's okay. To take it one step further, the people who vehemently disagreed with me were emotionally charged because they also lost someone in their life by an act of evil, and the person who exacted that evil used a gun. And so I knew that was the part that I think had my heart pounding, because I really do like to build bridges. I like to be a compassionate person. I like to understand other people's points of view, but waiting to go into the room where we would eventually ask those questions, people were coming in with pictures of their loved ones on buttons and big yellow signs and banners, and I thought, oh man, this is going to be, I pick up energy levels a lot of times, and I thought this is just going to be really charged, and they're not going to have the time to know me, know where I come from, why I come from this place. All they're going to know is the 30 seconds to a minute that I have to say something they really are not going to agree with. That was difficult.
Now, if you do feel comfortable, I picked up on something you did, just mention. If you do feel comfortable speaking on this, if you don't, that's okay as well. Now, when you mention about American Sniper and Michelle Obama being in support of it, from knowing or potentially knowing Bradley Cooper, how accurate was the movie? It's a personal question. If you don't feel comfortable speaking about it, obviously we could change the subject. But how accurate was the movie?
Yeah, no, that's nice of you. I appreciate you giving me that out, but I have no problem. I thought the movie was incredible in how accurately it portrayed the overriding themes of what it's like to be a warrior in a combat zone that's really intense and outside of the norm of what anybody would imagine a combat zone to be like. Dealing with terrorists is a much different deal than I think most people can imagine if they don't have some experience with it. And the overriding theme of what it's like to be a family member of someone you love who's serving, that was done really, really well. The brotherhood part of it, I think, was done really well. Bradley got Chris right really to a T. I give him so much credit for the amount of thought and time and care that he put into really understanding the person outside of just the script in the movie. And I think that was conveyed really well. He had even some, I call him kind of like a tell in poker, just some quirks and stuff down that people who know Chris really well were like, oh my gosh, he did that thing. And it's like, yes, he did. He even picked up on that. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And he also trained with live fire. He was hitting face plates at 600 yards with live rounds and training with military folks to do that. And that is something that people might assume is done for these type of movies, but it rarely is. Rarely do the actors actually get out and sweat and carry the heavy stuff. I mean, they'll a lot of times ask for, rubber guns or fakes or something so they don't have to carry all the weight while they're doing it. But Bradley did it all. And even the scene with him weightlifting overseas where he's pulling up a huge amount of weight, that was real. He actually did that, and he worked really hard in the gym to get there. So, I mean, I could go on and on. He even worked with a nutritionist to get the right kind of muscle mass to replicate Chris's instead of just being like this ridiculously ripped, bodybuilding type. He was like, no, he's ripped, but it was muscle mass and density that he was made of. And Bradley did that. He did an accent, which I asked him to do the accent, and I said, I can't imagine anybody playing Chris without an accent because his accent was just part of who he was, and it was really thick. And the studio and everybody was like, no, that is like suicide for an actor to attempt an accent, because if you get the accent wrong, it detracts from the entire movie. There's no way we're going to have him do that. But he took it on, man, and he practiced all the time. And I give him a lot of credit for being able to pull that off. That's no small feat. But, yeah, overall they did great. There are things that aren't exact in the movie, for sure, and that's just part of what a movie is. You can't represent an entire life in a 1.5 hours without consolidating and painting a picture pretty close to accurate, but changing it enough so that it can be quickly interpreted by the audience for things that are actually more complex, if that makes sense.
Of course, and that is the same response your brother-in-law Jeff gave. I interviewed Jeff, I believe, 2 weeks ago in a podcast, and it went very well.
Sure.
But watching the movie, and even how you mentioned, getting the accent down, that is something, it is one of my favorite movies, and always will be. And making it very real, and watching something go down and being able to witness and grab a feeling of what your husband was like is just so amazing and so wonderful to witness. Now, you have such an amazing journey, and when I did my research and I followed you with the news, you also participated in something called the American Sniper Shootout.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah. That's awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah, thanks. No, it was definitely an interesting time. I mean, really the point of that was to show that even an amateur can outshoot an expert if you use this technology that they have on the striking point weapon, and it's pretty impressive. I mean, there's no way I would have come anywhere close to being able to even be in the same realm as the champion that I was shooting against. So Bruce Pyatt, he's amazing. So yeah, it was pretty fun. I mean, that technology is really amazing, and I would love to see our first responders and military people get that in their hands, because there's so much that the gun does for you, so many calculations that the mind can't process it as quickly. I mean, Chris definitely did. I think experienced people definitely can, but the gun does it for you. And even more than that, there's technology where you can wear glasses, and in a little video screen in the sunglasses is what the scope sees, so that you can put the rifle around a brick wall and have your body completely protected and your head completely protected. You can see what the scope is seeing. You can lock in a target and press the trigger and hit a target with only your hands exposed, and that would have saved so many lives overseas, and would continue to if they'll ever get to the point where they'll let our guys use it. It'd be pretty amazing.
Now, how did you train for that? Because it's not anything towards you at all, one, for being a woman or anything like that. I don't want you to perceive my question wrong.
Yeah.
But how did you train for that? Because it is so amazing. Even how you said, an amateur. I know I would not be anywhere near good with a sniper rifle. I have no past training with it. How did you train for that?
Well, I didn't have much experience other than a little bit of hunting that I had just started doing, and so I had one of their military guys that worked for a tracking point. He sat with me for a couple of hours before the event. So in the days, there were 2 days, I think, before the event, and he worked with me for a couple of hours each day just on the basics of the weapon, letting me fire it, letting me practice different holds, because some of them there was a standing shot, so how you hold the rifle mattered. There was a kneeling shot and a sitting shot and one around the building. So those were more the things that I had to learn pretty quickly, because the gun really does do the rest of the work, but you do still have to know, and it is heavy, you know, how to hold it so that you don't shake, how to breathe, that kind of stuff to lock the target in the first place. It's a locking system almost like you would see on airplanes, like in Top Gun, right? Like you lock onto a target, and then the target can move, but if you press the trigger, the missile will hit the target. That's essentially what that rifle does. And so you have to just be calm and smooth enough to hit the target within a range to begin with, and then fire. But yeah, it was a little bit. I think the guy who created the gun, as confident as he was in it, he had $1 million on the line. I mean, if I didn't win, he had to pay the guy $1 million. And so he was like, I really have faith in this gun, and I have faith in you, but wow, this is please don't mess this up. But yeah, no kidding. A little bit of pressure, but it was fun. It worked.
And you prevailed.
I did. By the grace of God and the great set of technology in that gun, I sure did.
That is so wonderful. That is great. And you know, even to jump in along your journey, your book, American Wife, so wonderful and so amazing. Would you like to speak a little bit about that? You know, what is in that book? I have never read it, but I have read, the about page, and it's the reviews. People love it, and
good.
And I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. If for people who aren't big readers or who, like me, love to read but don't always find the time because work is getting in the way, I also recorded the audio version, so I narrated it, and you can hear me tell it. It's kind of, I don't know about anybody else, but I do that when I'm cleaning the house and traveling. Sometimes I'll just listen to the book on audio, but it's really, the reason to even do the book in the first place was twofold. One is I heard a lot from American Sniper about how healing it was for people to know they aren't alone. I also felt the same thing after American Sniper came out. I realized that I wasn't so alone in what I had experienced when we were going through it, and I thought, man, if I had only known that while we were going through it, how much easier my life could have been in a lot of ways, and Chris's and my life together could have been. I think it would have been a great thing for both of us. But so the one reason was to help those families and other people understand those families. And the other reason was there's so much more to Chris outside of just being a warrior. He's just an incredible person and father and husband, and I wanted to put that out there for people to know more of him too, because there's so much more to him that people don't know, and this is an attempt at some of that, even though, again, you can't put it all into a book and have it totally make sense. You can't get the twinkle of an eye, the pranks, the jokes, all that stuff, but you can get some of it, and so we did that in the book too. And if it wasn't for Jim DeFelice, who wrote American Sniper with us, Chris and I became good friends with Jim and poured our hearts out to him, and he put it in order for American Sniper. And since I knew him well and he truly loved Chris, it was an easier transition for me, I guess, to move forward with American Wife because he was on board. It was pretty soon after American Sniper came out, and I called the publisher and Jim pretty much sobbing and saying, there's no way I can get this book done. I can't even make sense of anything right now. And I was fighting some legal battles on behalf of Chris. I was working on, we just finished American Gun, I believe, the book that Chris had been working on before he died. I had obviously my kids, and being a mom, I was deep in grief, and we were looking at starting this foundation, and it just was so much, and there was no way I can do this, especially not now. And they convinced me, if you just hang on and just talk to Jim for a few hours at a time, now and then, we'll make it happen. There's nothing else you need to do. So I kind of doubtfully went into it thinking we could try. And I kind of, I emotionally vomited on him is basically what I did for hours on end. And he would break it up and put it into chunks that were manageable for me. And then he wrote the book and put it into 4 different sections, which are love, war, faith, and renewal. And what I've found is that that's just an overriding theme for all of us. That is life. We're all looking for love. We're all looking for faith in someone or something. We all have a war or a battle, multiple battles and struggles in this lifetime. And we're all just seeking out renewal. So it started out for the people who serve or the women who serve or people who wanted to understand that family and for Chris, and it ended up being a really healing book for men, women, military, non-military, all walks of life and all ages, because we all have those elements in our life. And sometimes looking at somebody else's experience helps us process our own, and that's what it ended up being.
And I do, how you say also, seeing the other side of Chris outside of, the military. One thing I do have to tell you that I love watching so much, I tell everybody about it, I've told my father, my mother to watch it, is when Chris got interviewed on Conan OBrien.
Yes.
And when he said, yes, sir, and Conan said, you don't have to keep calling me sir. I'm a talk show host. You're a Navy SEAL sniper. You're up here, and I'm down here. It was just wonderful. Yeah, I love that. I really do. I love that clip. I've watched it so many times, and it's great. It's very, very great.
Yeah, totally. What's funny is Conan is not only a great human being, like you saw him on that show, but he's another one that I think a lot of people just could easily underestimate, and not knowing him outside of being a comedian, which is, his job, you wouldn't know that he's the type of guy that when he moved from New York, he spent his money to bring his staff with him and take care of them because he didn't want them kind of on their own. And it wasn't just for selfish reasons of having a staff he knew and trusted. He also felt a responsibility to take care of them and not let them be, jobless when his situation changed. And so they all speak very, very highly of him. And I remember him, I guess it's a writer for his show. He was coming in and he said, oh man, Conan's so excited to meet you. He said, this is a guy who comes in and he said, he just read this huge novel. I guess Conan's ridiculously brilliant. And he said, he just devoured this huge novel on Custer's final battle. And he said, he came into work and we're all sitting there getting ready to write jokes for the show. And he comes in on this whiteboard and is just drawing out the battle and saying, you guys, you can't imagine the stuff that he was up against. And then they went here and then the troops went there and then, Custer went here, and he was just he said he was so excited, and the rest of them were just trying to absorb all the details that he's commenting on. And after a while, they were like, okay, that's cool, but we have work to do. So, but he's really passionate about history and military and all of that. So, yeah, I thought it was cool that he was able to convey it in kind of a humorous way on the show, but just so people know his heart, too. He really is an incredibly patriotic, respectful person.
Yes, and that's the type of media, not to get negative, that's the type of media that I like to watch. When you're putting the military heroes, the same stuff that I do with Patriots Corner and why I started it, is to give them the limelight, not to put them in false light. And whenever I watched that form of media in comparison to other forms of media where, your husband had been put in false light by various stations that I will not bring up, but that was just upsetting to see, and even everything with, not to get so negative, and I don't mean to be, even with Jesse Ventura, it was just horrible, and it was upsetting to see.
Yeah, now he's a piece of work.
Yeah, exactly, a psycho, a nut. But that being said, one thing I did also idolize and support you for doing was when you spoke out on the media against Michael Moore, who was also a crazy nut. Mm-hmm. And, I was so supportive to you. Did they contact you to try to bring you in? Because I know you're a Fox News contributor. Did they contact you to bring you in to speak on this topic, or is this something that you found out about and you maybe contacted them and said, I want to come in and give, my 2 cents and explain where this guy is completely going wrong? Because you're a Trump supporter as well?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, that last election was really, really hard for me. I think I was just not a fan of Hillary Clinton at the time. The stuff with Benghazi really just never left me, in addition to some other things. And so, I was definitely slow to watch President Trump too, because I really thought a lot of his principles were good. I just was hopeful that at some point we could have just a different representation of character in the way that I saw it. But I think that he's doing a great job of bringing that character forward, and that it probably had to be him with the way things got out of control in elections. I wouldn't have had that foresight before the election, but in hindsight, I can see that really, I guess it needed to be somebody really scrappy to just call it out and get the attention to the problems that have been going on with elections in this country for years. So but going back to your
well, just to state this too, I am a Republican, and I do support Trump. Obviously I was not a fan of Hillary Clinton whatsoever, and it always leads back to her. She's horrible. But one thing I do have to say, in just the positive, I miss GW. I love George W. Bush. I love him.
Yeah.
I love the whole Bush family.
Yeah, they're good people, and I look back sometimes at Ronald Reagan too and think what a great presidency he ended up having. And I guess he was really doubted when he started too. I mean, people were doubtful that this guy who was an actor really could come in and do much good, and he really led by his gut. And I talked to a guy who worked for President Reagan, and he said he was notorious for not paying attention to the polls, and this guy was actually in charge of bringing the information on the polls to the president. And he would laugh. He said, I'd just come in and they'd be in the trash, and I'd be like, sir, he said, the polls are not what concerns me. What concerns me is doing the right thing. And he would sit with a legal pad and just sort of meditate and think through on a very human level what needed to be done and what direction, and then he would write it out and really develop his thoughts, which is such a great picture of what I think we'd want a president to be, to really check in with their conscience and develop things that way. But anyway, yeah, we have definitely had some great presidents. And back to your question about the news, I did not call them. I usually don't. They call me when they want me to say something, and I was happy to do it because Corinne Owens is a phenomenal person, and I didn't know her at the time. I only knew some of my dearest friends are very close to her, and so I didn't want to speak about her without knowing anything for a fact. And I had the opportunity to get in touch with my friends and just say, okay, bring me up to speed to make sure. I mean, I can tell you what I would think, but I don't want to be one of those people that gets on national television and just assumes I know something or makes it into something I want it to be. So I got confirmation about who she was, what she was thinking, what she felt, and it was exactly what I would have thought and what I perceived. But I did not want to be a party to anybody using her for their own purpose or misstating or restating things the way that I believe Michael Moore did. I mean, a lot of people at that time were saying, oh, this poor woman is being used. And I thought, you don't know that. I know for a fact not one of you has gotten in touch with the community or the people that she's close to find that out. But they sure did make up a story that they wanted to use around her. And I thought that was so incredibly offensive and hypocritical. I mean, you're going to talk about using somebody. That was in fact using them, not giving her a chance to stand for her husband, who had been a silent warrior forever, never recognized, and now in his death could be brought to the forefront. That's a big deal.
Of course, and I remember even watching, I didn't find out about that incident until later. And that guy is such a jerk. He's a horrible guy, and it just goes back to, stuff that I'm always pondering in my head is why people don't see the fine line. Even if it's for media publicity or usage, why are they not seeing the fine line in something? Example, during that ceremony, you had Rosie O'Donnell outside boycotting and screaming her head off. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that ever needed to be, you know, addressed by anyone but the family. And it's, even with your situation, you know, it's just something that is, the same thing I said to your brother-in-law. It's your business. It's no one else's business. It's no one
Mm-hmm.
else's, for what's going on. And I just felt that it was totally, anti-American and very crazy. Almost mentally, different is why he was doing that. I just did not understand where the fine line was and why people don't see it.
Yeah, and I mean, he is the commander in chief, and so it is appropriate for him to talk about military accomplishments as well as military losses. And I think that people can be upset that it was received as well, or they can make assumptions on why he did it. But what I also know to be true is that the president and his family members have direct connection to a number of military people who are not admirals, generals, top of the line in the food chain military folks. They're regular, everyday military folks, and they have been asking the issues, and they have shown concern, and they do want to make sure that they're addressing it. At least that's the way it's being perceived, and that's not taken to the media, and they're not bragging about those relationships that they have. And so, to me, that speaks to their authenticity in truly caring about the people who serve, and I appreciate that a lot. And I think we're going to see more support from that administration for things that have been plaguing the military community for a long time.
Of course, and it's just one of those things that yes, it does have to be released, and it's unjust and it's not right, and it's the
Yeah.
false light that's very aggravating and horrible to watch and witness. Now, going back to the commander in chief and the president, do you feel, that it? And again, it is a personal question, and if you choose not to answer, that is perfectly okay. With the loss of your husband, was the president there for showing support, or do you feel like possibly President Trump might have shown maybe more support, or where I'm going with the question, or
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm certain that President Trump would have shown more support. I mean, he already has to members of the community that we've lost. And I didn't think at the time that I needed a phone call from President Obama, at all. I do recognize that the procession in Texas was the longest in the state's history. It was a big deal to Texans. It was a big deal to Americans who had read American Sniper and connected with Chris, who was a hero, and he was also an everyday guy. He sort of ended up being a representative of the best of our guys who serve, meaning the best of our guys and women who serve is somebody who's humble, who's real, who just comes out because they do love this country and they are willing to put it on the line for us. They're the everyday people. And I think that to know all of that, and it's realistic for people to be critical of President Obama to not reach out in that instance. I mean, we had people lowering their flags, half-mast all across the state and the country for Chris, and that would be a minute to recognize that impact as a president that I feel could have been powerful. But at the time, truly, I did not care. I would not have probably even wanted to take the call. I mean, I was in my own really depths of pain and survival and pushing forward. So I never looked at it at the time of being slighted. I didn't, it wasn't going to change anything. It wasn't going to mean anything. I don't even know that I would have known how to respond. It didn't impact me the same way. But again, if I take myself out of the situation, I do see why people feel it was inappropriate for him not to make some comment, even publicly, or some personal connection. But yeah, I didn't need that.
yes, and you explaining with Texas and everything, just the pure patriotism that was shown, during the memorial and everything. My grandfather, he is was born in Texas, and he loves Texas. And once I told him that I was getting the privilege to interview you, he was just, he's still asking me, when is the podcast going to be up? And I'm excited to get him up. He says that everyone in Texas is proud of your family. It's just pure patriotism that is shown in that state.
Yeah, it is. Texas is really different that way, and so let's give a shout out to your grandfather too. I appreciate the support, and I appreciate your family and your patriotism too. It's a way of serving that's powerful.
Well, I thank you for that, and it's just been such an honor to speak with you and to have the opportunity to speak with you and hear your journey and your story about your book, about the American Sniper Shootout, and about you challenging people. And I don't want to put words, but going against the false light media that is trying to put something on for something else, and show it in false light, and that's something that's not seen. And
right.
That's stuff that I'll even deal with in college with professors and everyone else, and it just gets to the point to where I feel like, from what I have gained from learning from women like you and men that I've interviewed on the show, is that patriotism is shown but is few and far between at times, and there's the last few true believers. And everything you do with the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation, that's all amazing. And is that you're doing that? Are you doing that just to pass on the great tradition of pure patriotism? Not half of it, but all of it.
Well, yeah, it's a great question and a great point that you make. I'll make 2 points here, and that is that when you talk about the state of things in the country, I think a lot of that is what we see, and it's what's presented to us that feels like people are less patriotic, because we get these really extreme people, and that's what makes the news. That's what we see, right? But I can tell you that that is not the majority of the country. And when you get out, podcasts like yours are important because they're showing that no matter what the mass media says, the people of this country, the everyday people that aren't making it on the news because they're not the extremists, they are deeply patriotic and faithful people who are reasonable and can have brave conversations with people who disagree with them. We're all over the place, but we don't see that very often. And so I still believe that we're in a good place in this country. And I didn't always believe that, but traveling the country and meeting the people, I do see that. And I do think that pure patriotism is alive and well in a way that, like I said, we don't see because of the media. But I wanted to bring up this point of an article that was written that said the next generation is lazy, they don't have a work ethic, they're not patriotic, that the country is in peril with looking at the generation coming up. Well, that article was written, I think, in the 1940s, and it was describing what we now call the greatest generation when they were kids. So the point is that sometimes every generation thinks the next one's going to screw it up and all hope is lost, but I don't think that we are there any more than we were there before. I still have young people all the time telling me they're signing up for the military, they love this country, they're willing to die for it, their family and friends support them. And to your point about the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation, yeah, this one is one of those things where I did not feel compelled to have an organization, foundation, or anything to carry Chris's name forward, because his name was already written in history with American Sniper, and he was loved by his family and friends in a way that wasn't going to die out. And I just felt very confident that he was going to be alive in our hearts and minds for generations, within our family and friend base and people that we'd lived in California and Texas and every life he had touched along the way. But what I did know is that we had talked about starting a foundation. It was very expensive to do it. And we had talked with accountants and lawyers and tried to figure that out. And we're still in the throes of doing that and weren't sure what we could do when he was killed. And, we found great healing in American Sniper for people in their marriages specifically. And so it became this natural fit to use the opportunity to bless more people through the success of American Sniper, and to say, you get it. We're hearing more and more people with letters and feedback saying that the movie helped us so much, and we were hearing the stories of how people were suffering. We lived the stories of how people were suffering. There was a 97% divorce rate when Chris and I were in the SEAL team. So 97% divorce rate. I mean, we were one of the few that made it out with our marriage intact. And so the best gift that I think we can give is to help families stay together. That starts with the marriage. We learned a lot of things along the way to keep our marriage together, and I want to pass those things forward. We have a partnership with the University of Texas and Baylor University, a private university here in Texas, that we've been able to give them grants to study these service marriages, because they are very different than the rest of the country. The divorce rates are 70, 80, and 90%, depending on which branch of service or which type of service our first responders are in. And the results are devastating. I mean, sometimes the family is broken up to the point that somebody moves and the children don't get to go with them. I get the calls. I have gotten the calls of people who are suicidal when their relationship breaks up. We've got some of the people that escape to drug and alcoholism because they loved each other enough to get in this marriage in the first place. It is their last safe place. They deal with evil every day on the streets. They deal with horrors that most of us cannot imagine. And their safe place is home. But there's a lot of things working against them succeeding. And so when it does fail, the results are devastating, not just for them, but for generations to come. So that's kind of my driving passion, is getting those marriages to a place where they're resilient, they're thriving. And I've lived and learned the tricks of the trade for those service marriages. We're studying more with the University of Texas and Baylor to develop even better, more specific programming for these unique marriages. And we've got 4 programs already. We're growing all the time. We've got a lot of support, and I'd love to even get more people to understand there's a lot that goes on behind the uniform, and the best thing we can do to help them is keep their safe place safe and intact, and that's, in my opinion, through their marriages.
Of course, and that's so wonderful, and that's good that that stuff is showing more. And a friend of mine, and the first podcast I ever did was with former United States Navy SEAL Chris McKinley, and him and his wife do this foundation, Suiting Warriors, getting suits to soldiers and
Right.
Other members of the military. The foundation that you started, it's just amazing, and it needs to be there. But
that's one thing that I noticed with service people, is that in some way or another they're always serving, right? And so they could have chosen to do anything in this world, but they chose the first responder and military community because they like to serve. But if they hadn't been in service in that way, they would have served in another way. So he's a perfect example of somebody who he's going to find a way to serve, whether he's traditionally enlisted or not. And there are a lot of people in this country who are like that too. And so they may not have chosen to go into the military or the first responder community, but they are service hearts. And I think that's somewhat like yours. They're patriotic. They like to serve. They like to share and spread the word. And we're finding that really is what it takes. There's less than 1% who put boots on the ground, but there's 99% of us who also have an ability to serve, and we tap into those people who not only have the ability but want to serve, and our country's going to be in really good shape.
Of course. And Taya, I would like to thank you so much for being on the show today, sharing your journey, an amazing story. Like I said, with your book, with the Shootout, this American Sniper Shootout, and you having your voice and expressing your patriotism. You are a very tough woman, and I've never even met you, and I already know that. And it's been such an honor to speak with you, and even hear about your past with Chris, who I'll always be a supporter of. I actually did a project on him a year ago in class.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How'd it turn out?
It turned out great. It's A+ material. Yeah, A+
Nice.
material. I even
Good
fit
for
in the
you.
rodeo stuff in there too.
Oh, good. That was such a big part of him, too. I'm so glad you did that. I appreciate your support a lot and the support of your listeners, too. It's a cool thing you've got going.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am. And, it's been an honor to speak with you. And good luck with everything. And if you ever happen to come in contact with GW, just tell him that Matt Malachy loves him.
Okay, Matt, I will do it. And I guarantee you he's the type of guy that'll mean something to him.
Well, please do that. Yeah, he's my favorite president ever. But thank you so much,
cool.
Taya, and God bless you and your family. And, you all are, the entire Kyle family, so brave and patriotic. And, God bless you all.
Well, thank you. God bless you, too.
Take care. Have a good night.
Okay, you too. All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Taya, I thank you so much, and God bless you, Taya Kyle, and your family. It's been such an honor. And to everyone listening with Patriots Corner, have a great night, and make sure you go and check out Taya Kyle's book, American Wife, and check out the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation that she founded as well. Again, Taya, thank you so much for being on Patriots Corner, and have a great night, America.